And now, broadcasting on Star Worldwide Networks, it's In the Green Room. Green is in, but what does that really mean for you? Join the gang for a fun and energetic half-glass, half-full perspective to what and how sustainability is the lifestyle for the future. It can really affect everything you do, from your health, wallet, environment, money, even your morals. So our goal, to help save the planet one show at a time. Now, welcome to the Green Room.
Welcome, everyone, to In the Green Room. I'm Kinga.
And I'm Chet. And tonight we have Item 9 Labs in the house. It's a celebration show because here in Arizona, we have just gone recreationally legal with cannabis. So we've got one of the best concentrate brands in the house tonight to tell us all about their brand and how things are going to be changing with cannabis laws moving forward.
Welcome,
it's going to be a really fun show.
Bryce Scalia.
Hi, nice to see you guys again.
Did I butcher your last name?
Scala.
Bryce
Welcome
Scala.
in the Green Room. And you want to get up on the mic too, yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Founder and Chief Revenue Officer of Item 9 Labs. That's exciting.
Welcome, Dr. James Nettler.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You're going to tell us how it's healthy for us.
Very
and
excited about this topic.
And Item
Veronica
9,
Booth.
the resident cannabis genius.
Hello, everybody.
Genius. Certified.
Perfect, amazing, genius. I learn so much every time you open up your mouth. I'm like, wow, I just am mesmerized by everything you say.
So Veronica is a master's student at University of Maryland in their relatively new program, Cannabis Science and Therapeutics, second-year master's student.
You're one of the first graduates, right?
So I have not graduated yet. I'm currently
okay.
in the program. So I'm in my second semester, first year.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yes.
So
I'm a baby in the program.
you're going to really tell us about all the scientific aspects, how cannabis is healthy for us, right?
Correct. We'll talk all about cannabis, how it works with our bodies, and how it can upgrade our quality of life.
So you're new in the master's program, but you've worked in the cannabis area now for 5-ish years. Is that right, Veronica?
Correct. I've been working with cannabis and helping people with their cannabis needs for quite some couple of years now.
So it's really important that people understand that cannabis, CBD, slash THC is really a plant-based medicine. And
then the hemp plant itself has a ton of other uses that are such as protein, building, clothing. It has a ton of applications and it's very useful.
And sustainable.
Yeah, it uses a lot less water than carbon.
And we're here saving the planet.
One show at a time. That's our little catchphrase here.
Well, and Bryce's story is fascinating because you had a marketing background. You were in counseling and psychology there originally, a number of different businesses, first in California, now in Arizona because it's so much more business friendly.
Very business friendly.
So can you tell us how you came to the cannabis business?
Yeah. I to be honest, really my reintroduction to cannabis as a medicine happened in, I want to say probably 2010 or 11. I was diagnosed with a liver disease for which I was going to have to undergo a kind of a mild but long-term form of chemotherapy.
Liver disease? We need you right on the mic.
Yep, liver disease. And so I was, at the time, completed a 6-month course in what was called pega interferon therapy. But it was an incredibly taxing, medication. And about halfway through, I started having difficulties with the side effects of the medication. And
why and how?
I started, I don't know how else to describe it other than my brain started acting differently. I started having thoughts that I had never had, identifying them as separate from my own awareness, which that in itself is kind of jarring. And so when I talked to my doctor, the two options that he gave me were benzodiazepines and opiate medications. And neither of those I was willing to take. I had worked in mental health and substance abuse and family therapy for close to a decade at that point. And 85% of those stories involved benzodiazepines and opiate medications, and I wasn't willing to look at those as a solution. And then he suggested cannabis. And at that point in my life, when he suggested it, what I effectively saw was a bong on my couch, and I knew that my wife wouldn't be comfortable with that, and I didn't know if I was even comfortable with that. It had been a few years since I had smoked cannabis, and he said, "No, it's different now. You should really go investigate." And so I was, lucky enough that one of my business partners at the time her mother was part of the kind of early inklings of our Arizona program. And so I met with her and she helped me get my card and kind of walked me through the process and then set me up with a series of different modalities and edibles and vapables and flower. And I was able to finish my treatment. And had I not finished my treatment, I don't know if I would have been able to have the medical success that I did to be able to, get rid of the liver disease that I did. And now, I think 5 years post-diagnosis. So I think I'm technically cleared by medical terms at this point. Doc, you can correct me on that.
It's remarkable.
Fantastic.
It's remarkable to hear stories like that because that is how this plant is magical and it heals.
Yeah.
Right, Veronica?
Correct.
Yeah. And so flash forward, a few years and I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. And I had just a deep feeling in my heart that this was the industry that I was supposed to move into and retire in. And my wife and I talked about it, and we were looking at it. We had a young child at the time, my son, and when we started talking about it, did we want to be the pot parents? Because we weren't really like cannabis consumers.
But do we really call it pot anymore?
No, I mean I don't personally. I call it cannabis. It's a very intentional word that I use. But we didn't want to be those parents, and we were really concerned about that. And one day we had the realization. I think most people, whether they consume cannabis or not, can recognize the vast difference in the health consequences of consuming cannabis versus alcohol. And
Alcohol is a straight up poison. It kills people on the regular.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It should be the one that is stigmatized and harder to get a hold of because you drink one bottle of vodka, you could die.
Yep.
You could smoke a whole gram of wax, you'll be okay.
Is that
you
true?
might get really hungry.
Well, hold on, let's ask the expert.
Yeah, you could not
Let's ask
overdose.
Veronica that. Can you overdose on cannabis?
Not one serving.
There
no.
are no reported incidents of death caused by cannabis overdose. Usually an overdose leads to you just falling asleep. There are no cannabinoid receptors near the stem cells, so you will not just stop breathing in your sleep or anything like that. It could get a little bit intense with anxiety, but nothing that you can just watch a fun movie, drink some water, have a couple of healthy snacks, and it will should pass safely.
Yeah.
No driving.
Technically,
And once again, she's
water is
educated.
almost more poisonous than cannabis. You could overdose on water quicker than you could overdose on cannabis.
It's actually a true statement.
Well, that is a true statement because people
It's shocking, but it is
overdosing
true.
on water people have died drinking too much water. That's true.
And people have used cannabis throughout history, have they not?
Yes. So cannabis was actually one of the first plants domesticated by humans, millions of years ago. It was domesticated because it has multiple purposes, as you just mentioned, right? It can be used for energy, for food, for fuel, for food, for healing, for medicine, and for many rituals and religious contexts throughout many years. Bringing it back to alcohol for a minute, people also say that cannabis can be like a drug or something that brings you to other things, but most people begin with alcohol. Like if you talk to younger kids, it seems like alcohol is the first substance that people use. And there have been many cases showing that cannabis actually can help with addictions and actually have people leave substances behind because they're just happy with cannabis. So
and I love that you brought that up because I think one of the most common misconceptions around cannabis is that if you have a medical cannabis program and or an adult use cannabis program in your state, that children are more likely to use it. And so I think we can all agree that the federal government, which is the one group in our country that says it's still illegal, NIDA, their watchdog for issues as this, actually issued a report, I believe it was 3 years ago now, stating that in any state that had a medical cannabis program at the very least, if not an adult use program, actually saw a decline in youth use and experimentation around cannabis because we effectively took the red button away, right?
Wait, I want to hear about all this legal stuff that's going on right now. So this is really great that you touched on it, Bryce.
Well,
yes,
furthermore,
Chet,
going
go
on
ahead.
at how alcohol is more of a gateway drug than cannabis, alcohol is much more frequently found in the systems of people that have overdosed in overdose deaths, and it's actually underreported. Whenever cannabis is found in their system, it's on the front page, but it's much more common for alcohol to be in the system of people that have overdosed on like opiates or other hard, like benzos.
Veronica, would you agree
stuff
with
like
this?
that?
I would agree. Absolutely.
So we first
Well, it's a
isolate-
fact. You can go look it up. So you don't have to agree with it.
Well,
So like alcohol,
Well,
we've been
I will.
using this stuff throughout history, but we only discovered THC in 1964. And then the first cannabis receptor, CB1, in 1988, suggesting that our bodies actually produced a form of cannabis that, because we had receptors already in place for it. And that we discussed the name anandamide.
Correct. So yeah, like I think for the longest time, people thought it was only THC in the plant, right? Like THC was discovered, and people just assume cannabis equals THC. But that was just the first cannabinoid that was discovered, and that cannabinoid did lead to the discovery of the endocannabinoid system and the separate receptors, and then our endogenous cannabinoids, the cannabinoids that our body creates. So yeah, I feel like the science has come a long way since then, even though it's been recently, just like you said, the 80s and 90s that we found out, but we are still learning so much more. We're learning that there are actually over 113 cannabinoids in the plant discovered so far, and they're all unique and they all have their own therapeutic benefits. So it's really a complex, amazing plant with a lot of healing potential.
So it starts with CBG, and from there, the major divisions are THC, which is the psychoactive form, and then the CBD, which is the therapeutic form.
Which I want to talk more about, because CBD is very important, because kids can be using CBD, and you don't want to really give THC, or I don't think you do, but you can tell us, because I'm not the expert to a child, but CBD is a form that kids can have, correct?
So
Veronica?
So I feel first, both are therapeutic. So both THC and CBD are therapeutic. They each have their therapeutic benefits. So THC can help with symptoms of PTSD. It can help with chronic nausea, chronic pain, etc. CBD also is therapeutic. Now, you're correct, Doc, that CBD is non-psychotropic, right? So it will not create those feelings of euphoria known as being high. That's exclusive to THC.
Is it true that CBD and THC work better in tandem
I
than
love this.
individually? Yes.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. So
Get a clap.
Good job, Chet.
yes,
I think it's true.
it is so true. So it's true. Like the cannabinoids work better together. So even in traces, so sometimes children are actually getting THC in the sense that their CBD oil may be full spectrum, and then there are traces of THC, which is very small, not enough to feel the effects, but it is enough to increase the pharmacology of CBD. Of course, there are some cases where children do receive THC, but those are extreme, just cases where kids really need the therapy of THC, and you try to level the feeling of being high with the therapy, but usually they do this with a medical doctor.
So, Veronica, you have children. If your kids have any kind of ailments, headache, anxiety, would you give CBD to your child?
At the moment, my child has no. I would say right now I have not given my kids any CBD, but right now my kids have not had the need for any cannabinoid therapy. However, if my kids if I had took them to the doctor and God forbid, somebody says that they need to take a certain medication or they need to, like, whatever it be, I will definitely check cannabis first because of the side effects of lots of pharmaceuticals available right now. And I think that this is a very healing plant with low side effects. So if my kids, depending on what they needed, I would absolutely be open to it.
How about you, Bryce? You're the founder of this company, Item 9 Labs. Bryce, tell us what you think.
Well, we have a couple founders, although I might have been the driving force. I have my children don't need it in this current state, and I think that's the most important thing. If we're going to use it medicinally, especially when it comes to adolescence, I think that there's very specific reason why it becomes a viable option, right? But do I feel safe in that setting? Absolutely. When I look at the side effects that could be present from a regular CBD administration versus like your standard medication for a child, even if I was just looking at vaccines, which my children have for that reason, if I was looking at vaccines and the side effects and the percentage rate of possible severe issue as a result of that, CBD is far less than that in itself, and it's not prescribed or mandated to go to school or mandated for any other reason. But it's far less because it's a natural derivative. And I think that's the most important thing about this.
Well, a lot of kids have anxiety and a lot of kids have trouble sleeping. Would you recommend for parents to use this routinely for child anxiety?
I mean, that's a hard one for me because I'm also a big fan of, I think our kids are on screens too much. And,
totally.
Right. And so as someone who's wearing blue blocking glasses right now so that I can be more present, I'm not a huge fan of medication to fiction issue if it's environmental.
Right.
But I think that, yes, there's a lot of options there for it. I mean, better circulation and nervous system reaction allows for lower anxiety, just in general. I mean, and I think, that's the thing that we have to remember, right? That whenever we're having like an intense emotion or some sort of a side effect, typically it's a chemical reaction that's occurring in our body and generating some sort of an electrical response that tells us how to respond in that. And I think that, what CBD in itself does is allow for a better communication between those cells. And so to me, that it's really difficult to find when that's a bad thing because it doesn't necessarily in itself correct the problem, but our bodies are glorious. Like our bodies are the most amazing mechanisms on this planet, and they traditionally restore themselves, regenerate, we regenerate cells when they're needed. And I think what it allows the body to do is enhance its natural ability to take care of itself. And that's what we're hoping for in any situation, right? That's why I think as a society, to me, cannabis is such a huge win because it's not just about the cannabis plant. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy cannabis thoroughly. However, the idea that this plant that's been around for 4,000 years in recorded use is just one of the many forms of medicine and or therapeutics that our planet just kind of naturally provides, and then opening up people to the idea of that, because we've been programmed. We've been programmed for a very long time, specifically around cannabis, that it is not medicine, it is not okay, that it's going to produce side effects that are not accurate. But as a result of that, I think there's a lot of natural medicines that we as a society have closed our mind off to, and I'm very excited now that a majority of the United States on a state-by-state basis has gotten to that point. I think that as a result of that, the federal government is finally starting to listen, that there's more options available to us. And I think that each state that goes online, there's at least a portion of that population that has to take a step back and say, man, I wonder what else is medicine out there in the natural state that we don't know about because we've been told so much about those options.
Yeah, it's exciting since we discovered the endogenous system. So we know the body's using it already, so that to have a way of evoking that is key. And I think you said the role in inflammatory diseases and particularly cancer, the medicinal potential is vast. But for kids who just want to feel zen and get high, are you going to tell them now's the magic bullet, you have what you need?
If we're talking about pain-killing qualities, if we're comparing CBD to Tylenol or Advil or one of those other over-the-counter drugs that are pretty bad for your liver and digestive system, I think CBD would probably be a better answer for a high school athlete that needs recovery from a baseball or football game. Because I remember I would pop 5 Advil after a baseball game and my shoulder would be blown out.
He did. I remember that.
Yeah, I could have been taking CBD and would have saved my liver. And digestive system.
You bring up football, and I think that football is probably one of the most affected sports by the prohibition of cannabis. We know that cannabis as a whole, CBD, I think in particular, Veronica.
Wait, massive shout out to the NBA because the NBA just made cannabis. They're not testing for it anymore.
Well, I think MLB is getting to that place as well. So
Awesome.
So huge kudos to those organizations because this is a huge thing, and especially like when I say what I'm going to say next, it's the NFL is one of the number one places for CBE. Which is basically a long-term traumatic brain injury that occurs through concussion after concussion and the scar tissue that develops, and the effect that this has on our NFL players.
Well, yeah, and CTE has been a massive...
CTE, thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, it's been a massive cause for suicide and other mental illnesses in ex-NFL players and other contact sports like MMA. There's been athletes from other sports that have had CTE too. So not to just only call out the NFL, but the NFL has had a very bad problem with it.
So Chet, are you saying that CBD or THC is what's going to help?
CBD actually, in those cases, CBD acts as a neuroprotectant. And so when there's a trauma to the head, it allows the cells to be protected in that space. And we've now known this for probably a decade. And that's why more so than I think any other sport, we've had professional athletes come out in the NFL and say, this is not only something that you need to be open to, you need to be suggesting on a regular basis to ensure the health of our players. And when you get to even like a collegiate level where we don't really talk about that often.
And then there's some players like Josh Norman that smoke openly and have been tested multiple times, suspended multiple times, but they just have said, marijuana and CBD have been a vital part of my recovery process. I'm not going to cut this out. And so he's been suspended like more than he's been available to play.
Yeah.
But weed and cannabis is that important to his recovery process. So,
but again, how young do you start? Is this something for high school football games?
I would say professional level, post 18.
I think
so that's a good question for both Bryce and Veronica. She's the expert because I know brains are still forming with kids. And so when their brains are still forming, is it okay for them to have CBD? And what is the science telling us about that?
So, I will say for children, like people under 21, humans under 21 do not have a developed brain yet. Actually, so like I would not go for any substance for children, but that includes like substances. We consume substances all the time. Right. Many of them are affecting our brain. So I would say whatever your children are putting in their mouth, like watch out and make sure that you're like filtering that, But for many parents who don't have that option, this is the best option for them, I applaud them. And I'm glad that so many parents do look for other sources. As I also applaud the doctors who are prescribing this to, or like at least recommending this to those children who do need it. But just do what is best for your child. And if it's a developing brain, just take respect of that.
So we're using it to reduce head injury, but also in, say, a CrossFit athlete who's not at risk for head injury, we're using it to improve their athletic performance.
Yeah, I would say like adult athletes and just like your regular people going to the gym every day are using cannabis more and more as part of their fitness routine in many ways. Like it helps it be a little more fun, helps you get back into it, puts you in the moment. It also helps with like endurance training, like long runs, long bike rides. And it's also great after, right? You take some CBD or you apply it topically. Also, we don't talk a lot about flower, but flower is great. It's got everything in it. It's got all the components in it. So it can be very medicinal and it's a great part of a fitness regimen.
And one thing I was going to say is I graduated from high school back in 2014, so not too long ago. And I went to a private Catholic school where you'd think not a single kid is smoking any weed. No, 90% of the kids in my class by sophomore year were buying weed from sketchy street dealers. And who knew what was on that stuff? And
don't mention the school you were at.
I won't. But I'm just saying, realistically, a very high percentage of today's youth that are in high school are getting their hands on substances. So you're better off getting them started with, CBD, something that's actually going to help their bodies, rather than having them find something on the street that's.
So meaning you want them to get it, if they are doing it, you want them to go to a place like Item 9 Labs where it's organic and it's not laced with something that's really deadly.
Well,
yeah.
Is that, Bryce, what would you say with that?
I would say I don't think anyone under the age of Item 9 of 21 should go to anything Item 9 Labs.
Yeah.
However,
yeah.
I think that like there are times, we're entering a new era in America where, maybe 5 years ago you wouldn't have been honest with your doctor about your cannabis consumption. And that's a real thing. Today you can be. So please do that. And if, even if you're, someone under the age of 21 who's listening to this, although I don't support your cannabis use in any way, shape, form, or fashion at all.
I love that. Good for you.
If you are, and I have kids and will be drug tested all the way through high school, because that's the least I can do as someone who's in cannabis to ensure.
Because their brains aren't formed yet, right?
100%. But if you are under the age of 21 and you do consume cannabis, please be honest with your doctors about what you're doing, because I think it's really important that you let the people that are designing your care know what all substances you're consuming that could have an effect on that. I think one of the things that was said that I really dug earlier too was talking about the CrossFit and kind of that overachieving, because I think, that for me and like my founders, and I want to give a quick shout out to, Charlie and Andy and Mark and Sean and those guys, because, it was really a culmination of all of us that created the company, in that we were not your traditional stoners. We were not guys that were, what anyone would see hanging out, listening to Bob Marley under the Led Zeppelin poster with the black light. Like, we weren't those guys.
Led Zeppelin's my favorite band.
There's nothing wrong with any of those things. But there's nothing wrong with any of those things. Love the band, love black lights. But we weren't those people. We were really high functioning overachievers who owned our own businesses,
and how did you create it?
Well, and that's really how it kind of came together, was just us looking for products that would meet the demand that we had. And so, we started looking at, okay, how can we do this better? Well, transparency was a big piece of that. Transparency is something that is seriously lacking in the cannabis industry. And if you live in the state of Arizona and in most states now, you have the ability to get the analytical labs results of the product you're using. It's part of our state law. If you have questions, look at them. If you go to Item 9 Labs and you buy one of our products, then there's a QR code on there that takes you to the test result for the product that you're consuming.
Is that how they're better?
Is
that how your product
know
is better?
that.
Explain that. People don't know this. Tell us why.
Well, and that's the whole thing. Know what's in the product that you're consuming. Now, to be honest, in cannabis, the requirements that we have placed on products and residual solvents and things in these are actually incredibly arbitrary. They're very, very minute. In fact, if you went to the store and bought a can of beans, there are more pesticides and residual solvents in that can of beans than would be in a legal cannabis product. That's
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
wow.
real. Right now,
because you are organic.
Well, not just that, but because our requirements are so like
strict.
minimal. Yeah, they're very strict. And so, if you're a legal compliant cannabis company today, you meet the highest requirements for cleanliness in the nation. That is a huge thing that most people don't realize. Like, any restaurant that is operating today has a lower requirement than I do to create products. Any product that you would consume today as a medicine has a lower requirement than I do as a medicine. That's real. We have to compete. We have the security regulations of a bank and the health regulations of a hospital. And those things have to co-join in the middle, and that's how we operate. So although we kind of look at the cannabis people as the lazy ones, I would challenge most people in any other industry to come do what I do in this industry, because it's so difficult. So, like, when we're here, we're not here by accident. This isn't an easy place. It's twice as hard and 3 times as expensive as anyone thinks it is to operate, guaranteed. We're here because we care. And we're here because we want to be here, and because we want to ensure that the next generation of cannabis businesses is employing the same best practices that we are today, but elevated. Like, I don't want you to do it how I did it today next year. I want you to do it better than I did. Figure out what I was missing and then improve on that, because that's really what we owe to the future of this business, is to continue as society starts to welcome us. We have a responsibility to accept that welcome with integrity. And we have to do that through, transparency in the products that we're creating and what we're putting in them. Better education, which is why Veronica, I shout her names from the rooftop on a daily basis.
We love Veronica.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of places where you can go get really, real education about what this cannabis product is going to do to you. What are the potencies that you're truly looking at? I say often, like, we don't ever go shop for alcohol by proof unless we're 17 years old and giving our older brother money. Like, that's not something we do. But for some reason, a lot of times in cannabis, we shop for cannabis by proof. That's silly to me. Curate your experience. Rarely am I looking for Everclear. In fact, in 20 years, I haven't looked for. Yeah, I haven't looked for Everclear. Yeah.
So
right?
you guys are organic. You're responsible. You're not allowing people under 21. You don't recommend it for people under 21. You're authentic, and you are telling us that you guys are completely clean, and you're the leaders.
And let's talk about their products for a second.
But really quickly, everybody I talked to in the last couple of days and said you're going to be on the show, they all say that you're the leading their favorite cannabis company. So shout out.
Wait, this Apollo pen, we've been hitting it a little bit. It tastes amazing. So if you guys could tell us a little bit about the Apollo cartridge line.
I'm going to qualify
nice.
real quick. So most people, if you're familiar with the cannabis program, there's different types of cartridges or concentrated oils that you can take on the go with you. The traditional one that you would see is kind of a clear liquid. It looks like a honey, maybe with some color. That would be called a distilled THC cartridge or a broad spectrum cartridge, depending on the extraction technique.
And how does that affect the body? differently than smoking like a joint?
It is definitely different.
'Cause I don't know that.
Yeah, so you're isolating molecules. I often refer to a distillate high as a champagne high. If those of you who are familiar with drinking, if you were to get champagne drunk, it's a very different drunk than a beer drunk or anything else. I always
True.
It's kind of disorienting to me. Although some people really enjoy it, it's not for me. Now the live resin cartridge that comes in our Apollo and soon starting March 1st, our Orion device is a live resin. And I would really love Veronica to kind of break it down for us because there's a lot that plant creates that like we don't showcase all the time.
Hello. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between live resin, distilled THC product. And we're also going to talk a little bit about flower because it just is a very important part of the process, right? The plant, the cannabis plant. So what is live resin? So live resin is we take the cannabis plant and we clip it, right? We harvest it. And right at harvest, when those cannabinoids and terpenes of the plant, with that chemistry of the plant is at its peak freshness, we freeze it right away, right? So it's just kind of like the vegetables that you see in the supermarket that are frozen they're frozen at the peak of freshness to preserve the vitamins and minerals, right?
Flash frozen, instantaneously frozen.
Exactly,
Yeah.
flash frozen. So it's the same way. We take this plant, when all that chemistry is at its peak, we freeze it, right? Now, once it's frozen, we're going to extract or separate that chemistry, those phytochemicals, from the plant matter. And what we're left with is live resin. It's an extract live resin. Now, live resin is a full spectrum cannabis extract. So what is full spectrum? What does that mean?
Full spectrum. Can you say that again? Full spectrum.
Cannabis extract.
Okay.
Does that mean they got all the cannabinoids?
Yeah. Yeah, right. So what full spectrum means that all of that chemistry, that phytochemistry that it started in that beginning strain, right, that we had at the beginning, it's expressed in the extract. So that makes a big difference, right? Because all of those guys, science has proven that all the compounds of the cannabis plant work collectively to create the overall experience, right? So the synergy of all of those compounds creates a greater, deeper, longer lasting effect than one cannabinoid could do on its own. So when we have live resin, it's an experience like flower. When you use these Apollo pods, it's like you're a very smoke-free, ash-free, discreet, and portable way of just having an Item 9 Lab strain.
Well, and it's healthier than flower because all that plant matter is not going in your lungs, right?
So
there's no flame.
Smoke-free, there's no combustion. There are ways to consume flower. You can also vaporize flower, like a volcano or a vaporizer. But yeah, this is not a giant balloon. It's a nice little pen that you can carry around.
Yeah, volcanoes. Not
Okay,
very
I have a question.
convenient.
I wrote it down. What is live resin? Because you kept saying that, and I don't know what that is.
So live resin is that extraction. So when I take that frozen plant and then we extract it, it's gonna look like what's in that pod. So it's an extract. It's a wax. It's just this yellowy, terpene colored. Depending on the strain, different texture. It could be a little more gooey, a little
the
bit
residue that's left over.
Yeah, so it's all that. It's all of that. Yeah, it's all of that. So it's all that good stuff, really. It's all the stuff that really is gonna they're gonna play with one another and play in your body, and all those different compounds are gonna work collectively to hit different biological targets within your body. So it just gives you a more well-rounded experience. Now, if we just have THC in a product, which is what's a distillate, right? It's distilled, isolated THC, right? We just take that THC and we separate it. When we do something like that, THC is working on its own, right? So it's just hitting like one or two receptors, not doing much because it doesn't have all that help, right? And then sometimes I compare it to sugar. Like if you eat a bowl of sugar, is that good? No. But if we have a delicious cupcake and it's yeah, that tastes delicious because you have all those ingredients working collectively to create that decadent dessert. Just a spoonful of sugar is not really gonna do it.
That's a good example.
Yay. So live resin is going to have all that good stuff so your body really can work with it. THC, you need a lower dose as well because when THC is working with all those components, they just work together. They can do more with less. When you have just THC alone, you usually need higher doses and more consistent dosing.
Right, and you gave the example sort of turmeric, where if you take turmeric in strict isolation, you lose the benefit. You need the other molecules in the entire plant to...
Yeah, nature knows what it's doing. I feel like that's how fruits are delivered, right? So you can absorb the vitamins. It's nature's deliver perfectly for us, for our bodies. That's how I look at it. It's the way nature intended.
So how is the extraction process different for like these diamond sauce than live resin? Because this diamond sauce looks insane.
There are.
And what is diamond sauce?
It looks delicious.
So effectively, traditionally, actually, if we had a cannabis plant in front of us, the molecule that would be most present on the THC scale in that plant is actually THCA, and THCA is the precursor to THC, which is why now you can go buy edibles in most states. But years ago, prior to there being an edible market, if people made a cannabis edible at home and they didn't pre-treat the cannabis itself, they wouldn't have an effect. However, once you heat cannabis, and it's depending whether it's combustion or convection, it's totally different. So I'm not going to say that it's online, but if you wanted to go on Google and search that, there might be some recipes. However, if you were to pre-treat that cannabis, what you're effectively doing is activating it or decarboxing it. I think that's the correct term for it. And so in that,
I don't know what that word means.
So what that effectively means is that we're heating the THCA to remove an oxygen molecule. And once we do that, we activate the THC. Now that THC can be used, you can be ingested, it can be inhaled, or it can be used topically at that point. So in fact, the THC that is traditionally in a vape cartridge is actually activated oil. In fact, I had a very dear friend, Tony, if you're listening,
Hi, Tony.
Yeah, that actually broke some ribs on a ski trip, and he did not want to take the opiate medication that was recommended to him, and so what we were able to do, because he didn't want to smoke either, was utilize the distillate on some additional. He broke it open and then was able to add it to some crackers and sandwiches and stuff to get it into his system to help treat his pain, and so once it's activated, you can use it in that way, but so. When you're making diamonds and sauce, what we're effectively doing is taking the raw extract from that plant done through a fresh frozen process. If that flower has been dried at all, then we've lost some of the chemical makeup of that plant through the drying process. It changes and it has other uses, but it's not used as well at that point. So we take that, we pressurize it, and through the pressurization of that process, different molecules separate at different points. It's very sciencey. I often feel like I don't know anything when I walk into our laboratory, between like the lab manager who's an evil genius and our molecular biologist director. I know very little bit even though in most situations I would sound really smart. But
you do sound really smart.
Yeah,
you do sound really smart.
Just as long as I'm not standing next to them. But so like in that
Scala from Item 9 Labs.
Yep. But so when they pressurize that, the molecules fall out, and basically you get a rock crystal, almost like you would grow rock crystals in science school. And that rock crystal is a pure THCA crystal. And there's a lot of different modalities for use in that. There's an amazing company named Empower out of Oregon that uses it for a topical, and they've done study after study, although not approved studies because our federal government won't allow them to be approved studies yet because it's still a Schedule 1.
They just federally legalized it in Canada, so they're a little bit ahead of the curve over there.
They are, a lot ahead of the curve. One of the people that I always recommend, if you're suffering from, cancer or a severe ailment that cannabis could be a treatment, check out phoenixtears.ca. Rick Simpson was a pioneer in our industry. He was a Canadian. We love our neighbors to the north. But he found cannabis to be a viable treatment for a large array of ailments, and I won't quote them. You can go to his website and check it out. But he also felt that it was really important that information was public. So you can go to his website. He has recipes on how to make the medicine, what he suggests for it, and the different successes that he's had with that.
It's called Tears?
phoenixtears.ca. It just happens to be that we're in Phoenix right now, Arizona. But yeah, it's Phoenix, just like the city in Arizona, tears.ca.
Can we talk about edibles versus the smoked product?
Yeah.
And why are the edibles so much more potent?
Yes, Doc, can we please talk about that? Because where I've been in a state where it's legal, I've actually done a little fun stuff with my kids. And I just go crazy giggling the whole time.
You mean you ate an edible? That's like...
Yes, I ate an edible.
And doing fun stuff, that's not very specific. Yeah, you ate an edible. We're on the air. You got to be more specific than that.
Where it was legal, I ate an edible with my kids. And Chet, don't I go just?
It's legal here now, though. So,
But I just laugh
it's
the whole time. I can't even talk.
Yeah, but that's a good thing. Being happy and silly. Yeah,
Kinga,
what's
that
so
is,
bad about that?
if there was one thing that I hear from more than anything else from people who do not consume cannabis on a regular basis, it is, I will not smoke it, but I think I would be open to an edible. Please, Veronica, please, for the love of all these people that have that plan in their head right now, will you please explain why that is the opposite of the right idea?
Let's do this, because this is actually something that I have a lot of friends have the same issue. My family members the same. I'm like, here, you want to hit this joint? And they're like, no. And then I'm like, okay, here's a brownie. And then they want to eat it. I'm like, no, this is not how you want to go about it. But I guess it's just less scary. People do protect their lungs. And it just seems like, and honestly, edibles can be quite delicious, which adds to the problem because it's hard to stop eating them, right? So, okay, so let's talk about this. Now, when we inhale a cannabis product, such as the Apollo or a vaporizer or flower, then what happens is that phytochemical, right, THC, let's talk about THC right now, it goes into our lungs. And from our lungs, it is absorbed into our bloodstream. And from our bloodstream, it goes right into our brain, right? So we feel it pretty immediately, which is a great thing, right? Because you know right away how you feel, whether you want more or whether you don't. If you can enjoy it, it's going down, you take one more puff, you can feel that again. You can really get to your therapeutic range or how you want to feel pretty consistently. You can really fine tune it when you're inhaling cannabis. Now, when you eat it, what happens is when we consume any type of medication is that it first has to go to our liver. And the liver, for this first pass metabolism, is trying to break it down. It sometimes changes the medication, right? It changes that molecule. So what happens is when we consume THC, our liver does a switcheroo, like it switches it, right? It is no longer THC that's going to go into our body. It's going to be 11-hydroxy THC. And this is now a different molecule. Now,
isn't it more psychoactive?
Oh, yeah.
It can make people hallucinate.
I mean, people have reported hallucination. I would say that will have to be like a very high dose. But it's all how sensitive you are to THC. So yeah, it's much more potent. It binds to our receptors in our brain much more aggressively. Also, depending on your metabolism, it may take a while to feel it, right? It's not going to be immediate like when we inhale it. So you eat it and you have to wait. And it seems like the waiting is really hard to do, right? Because everybody just has one more bite. Or, those memes, like these edibles, and then people are flying.
100%,
it's true.
yeah.
It's true. So like,
but Veronica, I feel like in some places I've seen drinks that say they're able to be activated earlier due to the size of the THC molecules. Is that the case?
So yeah, so not every time you put it into our mouth, it's gonna. So if you have a lollipop, for example, or a mint or anything like that, or if the molecule's small enough, it can be absorbed buccally by our mouth, like by the gums. So then it's not going to the liver anymore. So when we get it in, like when it goes to the liver and it just changes the whole thing. It is not the same. It really is a different medication, a different molecule.
So you talked about dose and how older doses were 5-10 milligram range, and now the recommended dose that you would say for a responsible user is 2.5 milligrams.
I mean, cannabis as a whole has just changed so dramatically in really like the last 20 years that I think, that's a really important thing to understand. I think because what you have now, the people that are starting to use cannabis and probably the highest, levels are going to be the population that's over the age of 60, which were probably open to the idea of cannabis in college, but hasn't been since then. Now, the cannabis that was used 25 years ago was traditionally high in a molecule called delta-8 THC, which is actually a less psychoactive THC. Right. And so when we as an industry started growing cannabis indoors, primarily in the 90s, that's when we actually kind of mutated the plant to have it produce more delta-9 THC. And delta-9 THC is actually, when we reference THC today, that's what we're referencing, is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol?
Right.
Hydrocannabinoid.
Cannabinoid, what she said. And so that's, but that's what THC is today when we reference that as a potency or as anything. Now, that delta-9 THC is far more psychoactive than the delta-8. And so, many, many moons ago, when I first started partaking in cannabis, although I wouldn't have done that if it was illegal, but had I done that when it was illegal, it would have been far less psychoactive, and I could have done a lot of activities. Like you could smoke a big bag of pot, and you could go about your day. Today, if you smoked a big bag of pot, you wouldn't do that's your day. That's what you did.
Right.
it ends right there. Maybe Netflix, but that's it. And so it's changed dramatically. So now what's happened is people that are learning about cannabis at this point in life. Your cannabis back then was going to be anywhere from 7 to 10% potency. For us, if it's under 18%, I'm floored. I'm shocked and appalled, just because most cannabis today is not that low in THC. So when you go out to a dispensary, I think that at some point our market will mature to the point where probably 2.5 milligrams is the standard dose of an edible. I think that's a responsible dose.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember like a couple of years ago, we would tell patients or people who consume cannabis to start with like 5 to 10 milligrams. And that is so high. And I understand that's still the lingo. That's still something that a lot of people working at dispensaries might say and might recommend. But like that is a very high dose. So 2.5 milligrams, I would say, is the way to go. And then wait 8 to 24 hours before you decide to take another 2.5. Bring a notebook, your journal, take notes at what time you dose, how you felt before, how you felt after. If in 24 hours you're like, hey, that wasn't enough. Like I felt like I could have gone a little bit higher, reach a higher therapeutic level, then you can try the next day or whenever the time is right, a little bit higher dose. But you do want to give it a very long time for the effects to take place. You don't want to start feeling it when the other one is coming on. That's when things go crazy.
I just want to say, I've never heard you say that before, but I really like that, the 8 to 24 hours, because I think that's a really most people say wait an hour. And my wife, for example, was a medical patient, had a card, and she was one of the people that wanted to eat it. She didn't want to smoke it. And I said, okay. And I gave her a small piece of a brownie and an hour. And I told her to wait an hour. And she waited an hour. And she asked for more. And I said, I love you too much to do this right now. Just wait 15 more minutes. And if you're still there, then I'll give you some more. And I kid you not, 15 minutes later, she's flash dancing in our kitchen because it was way too much for her, throwing water on her face. And so I really like that, like that the cannabis isn't going anywhere. It's the cat's out of the bag. Your dispensary is not going to be closed tomorrow. You can wait a day, but also to that, like you said with the dosing, like one peach ring is in most places that have an adult use market is 10 milligrams in itself. Mm-hmm. Not the bag, which is where I think a lot of like the trouble happens, where you're like, oh, cool, I got a bag of candy, but no, that whole bag of candy is enough for you and your 9 friends. That is not to be consumed in one sitting by one person. And so, I think that's a really good, thing right there. Wait a day.
Wait a day. It's a conservative dose, but I mean, it can alleviate a lot of anxiety and a bad time. Like I know sometimes you get so excited and we set it up just right and we really want to have a good time, but like, just wait, take your notes, then try again later. Responsible cannabis use is fun.
And the Delta 8 THC gel cap is the only edible that Item 9 Labs is producing right now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's the less psychoactive form.
Yeah, correct. There wasn't anyone doing it. And, now there's a couple other companies in town, and I'll even give them shout outs because I think it's such an important molecule. I think iLava additionally has a Delta 8. I think there's another company out there that's doing a Delta 8 as well now.
There is, but I don't remember.
But yeah. But so iLava, great company. But, with Delta 8, I think that Delta 8 is, we often joke about that it's what you thought CBD was going to feel like. Now, Arizona is one of the few states in which the hemp bill had additional restrictions on hemp products at a state level. So most states in the U.S., you could actually probably get Delta 8 legally right now. Arizona is not one of those states unless you go to a dispensary that you can actually get Delta 8. It's a whole political thing. I won't go into it. But so in most states, you can get this legally today. But Delta 8 is the in-between. I think it's one of the reasons why Item 9 Labs started our education program. And I don't think I said it, but YouTube/Item 9 Labs. You'll see Veronica's smiling
Yes.
face.
Good stuff. Black
There's
dress
a
every
ton
time.
of different videos on there, both in English and Spanish.
Yes.
So that talking about cannabinoids and the different products and what they do and how they interact with your body. So I really encourage that. But Delta 8 for us was the one that really said, hey, we need to educate people because people didn't know what it was, and so they would sell it to someone who smoked pot all the time, and they thought it was broken because they didn't get them high. But now to someone who's never used a psychoactive substance, it was very strong. So it was really a good in between, Delta 9 THC, and so that's why we started our education program. And it's just kind of
Well, it is so
Wait,
important.
hold on.
It is so
Before-
important.
We only have a few
Go ahead,
minutes
Chet.
left,
Go,
so
Chet.
let's shout out a few of the locations where our listeners can go and buy Item 9 Lab products at. What dispensaries are you guys in the Valley?
In the Phoenix Metro Valley, I would say local joint over kind of by the air park, and the Mint dispensary in Tempe. We love both those guys. They're great. Curaleaf and All Harvest locations as well. If you're down south, Prime Leaf in Tucson, huge fans of. Greenhouse in Flagstaff and Green Farms. Those are kind of our bigger locations.
Do you actually have a factory where people can go in and buy there, or do you just?
No, the way the program kind of has
Okay.
been set up here, you would go to one of those participating dispensaries, but normally we're doing some kind of cool contest or something in conjunction with them. So we always.
And you're in
encourage-
other
But now
states. Where
everybody
else are you?
over the age of 21 can go to one of those dispensaries now.
Okay.
So-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we actually have recently merged with a dispensary franchise, retail, Unity Road, unityroad.com. And we, with our franchise partners, we have locations opening in Boulder, West Virginia. As of this weekend, we were awarded a license. We have dispensary
That's
operation.
exciting.
Yeah, in Michigan with actually the Mint guys partnered on that, and then other states coming online here quicker than that. But yeah, item9labs.com or item9labscorp.com. Ticker symbol on OTCQX INLB.
And
It's so important for you to be educating us all because, I was in Colorado with your story about your wife and her eating the brownie. I was in Colorado and just having a fun night, and I had something important the next day. But everybody talked me into having a little quarter of a gummy, and I thought everything was fine. And then I went to my room and I went to bed, and then it kicked in. And I just didn't have any knowledge. And if you already know that this is what a gummy's going to do, and this is what a brownie's going to do, and how it doesn't kick in for a long time, and I laughed the whole next day, through something very important. Like I uncontrollably laughing with Trammell.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So I have a question for both Veronica and Bryce. So we've had other shows on Alzheimer's, and I know, there's a stigma that, pot smokers, you lose your memory and you get forgetful. But we had people saying on here, Veronica, that it can actually improve, help fight off Alzheimer's. How is that true?
So there is some studies showing that I'm not exactly sure how it works, so don't quote me, but what I hear is that cannabis can help with a plaque that forms in certain part of the brain that leads to Alzheimer's. So, and also with the memory thing, cannabis does not have to be so bad for the memory. Again, if you have the flower, all the components work collectively. It actually can help with your memory, and it can help with symptoms of PTSD through the memory as well. But yeah, there are some exciting studies coming out about Alzheimer's and how it can maybe help you from getting it.
So I'm hoping everybody out there that's listening to the show has learned a lot. We're hoping to have these two amazing, brilliant educators back on the show. We're asking everybody to subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel, In the Green Room. And please tell your friends. And we're here saving the planet
One
show at a time. So Bryce, what do you want to be? What is on your bucket list for your company?
Ooh, bucket list for the company.
We have 2 minutes.
I believe that we have a superior product, and if I believe that, then I believe that we have a responsibility to get it into the hands of as many people as possible through superior education and acting with integrity. Our goal is to get it into the hands of as many people as possible over the next few years.
And hopefully we can have you guys back on soon, because aren't you launching a new product soon, Orion?
Yeah, we have the Orion launching March 1st, and we would love to come see you guys again.
And we'd love for
Okay,
you to bring
sweet.
patients that have been healed. So Veronica, what do you see in the future with cannabis?
I see people realizing how they can change the quality of life and improve the way they feel happier, feel better with a plant that's grown from nature and it is so kind and like gentle on the body and soul.
Doc, are you going to recommend this in the future to your patients?
I'm excited about the possibilities. I'll have to learn a little bit more, but I may suggest it to some who are needing options.
Now you
Okay.
have a resource.
There we
Exactly.
go. So we're saving
Now
the planet.
now I have a product I
One
can trust.
One show at a time. Woo!
Thank you for listening to In the Green Room. Join us here live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. or anytime on demand 24/7 on StarWorldWideNetworks.com.